I would like to call to order the February 7th, 2022 Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome, everyone. First up is approval of our work session agenda, which you all have a copy of that before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. I will mention that Commissioner Shue is with us virtually tonight, and I did hear him vote, so our audio must be working back and forth. Next up is discussion items. First is from Infrastructure and Asset Management, Emergency Medical Services Headquarters Project Update, and we're glad to hear from Kyle Billifer on that item.
Lauren, could you bring up the pictures mentioned? Thank you. So just kind of wanted to give you an update. The pictorial update kind of shows that everything is being done in the ground right now. So what you're seeing is the majority of the grading has been done for the site, and what you're seeing is them taking out all of the remaining rock that they can, so they drill it and put an epoxy in it versus blasting. Blasting is the last case scenario, especially with the area along Cabarrus Avenue due to the high pressure gas line that exists there. So that's kind of what you're seeing happening. All the rock that could be taken out by excavator has already been done so. So that's what they're doing primary, so that we can get the footers and the underground utilities in, specifically stormwater. That's obviously your biggest challenge because it's the deepest that you have to go. We're starting to probably get to just about a third away through some of the footings on one side of the building, and working our way, obviously, with the weather. There hasn't been much work done lately, so that's kind of slowing us down. We did receive our DOT signal permit the other day, and that allows us to move forward with the actual permit that allows us to start putting in all the underground MEP. So the storage trailers that are on site that have all the conduit and everything else in them that we have not been able to put in the ground yet, that'll start going in as soon as we have that permit from the county. So very excited about that. That was a big milestone that we were waiting for. And we do have all of our stormwater basins in, so we're completely compliant with our erosion control permit. We're just trying to find in one of our stormwater basins, again, the one that's on the Cabarrus Avenue side, because of the rock, we're having an issue of the outlet piping. So we're still working and drilling and throwing in epoxy and solvent to try to break up that rock so as to not to blast. In terms of the upcoming milestones that you'll see over the next few months, about the time I make my next presentation, is we're targeting mid-April and May for the steel erection on site. So at that point, you would see it go vertical. Again, that's being impacted by weather, but the steel package is secured and is being fabricated currently. All in the meantime, everything that's going to go on out there is subgrade. So you might not see much. You'll see a couple pipes on the ground, and then they'll drop into the ground a couple days later. If you just want to scroll through the pictures. That just kind of shows you all your support, your infrastructure for your footer going in. Just a long-range site showing how they were getting some of that rock out. Again, your footer. It's your stormwater pipe. It's a very successful stormwater control measure right there. It's a bad day that picture was taken. Delete that so nobody sees that anytime soon. All right, you can scroll along. That just shows you them being able to level the stormwater pipe so that they have a receiver on the other side that shoots that to show that we have the right grade on the stormwater pipe. And that's everything that we have to get in the ground. We actually have a little bit more coming than that. Again, showing your footers. Same thing. And I believe that is all going to be where the vehicle bay is, if I'm not mistaken. Keep scrolling. A lot of pictures of the same thing, but some of them are in different areas and show different progress. It's been very slow going, so as they clear out the rock from a certain point and get to the depth they need, they're immediately going back and putting in the footer to try to get back to the schedule we need to be on. Shows the pour. Again with the pour. and the entire distance of the pour. So that's all on Union Cemetery. I just kind of wanted to give you a little perspective of how deep we're having to go. That's it. Are there any questions?
Questions for Kyle? That certainly shows a whole lot more in these pictures than what you can see riding by in your car.
That's why I felt it was advisable for an update.
Absolutely.
I assure you we are working there. It's just very slow going with the rock, and the weather is not really cooperating.
Well,
for what
I
they
did
do.
see a nice pile of rock yesterday.
We
out
have
there.
several of them.
So tell me what you drill the rock and put epoxy in?
Yeah,
What-
it expands at a certain temperature, so it tries to
Okay.
break up the rock internally. And it's actually been very beneficial. We have not had to blast once, but I'm a little hesitant to say that.
Yeah, very good. Any other questions for Kyle?
Just one real quick. Kyle, this is Lynn. What is the projected finish date for this project?
Still April 2023.
April 2023,
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And we move to item 3.2 now, and that is our innovation report, and we're happy to have Todd Shanley for that item.
Good evening. I'm very excited to share with you this project that has been years in the making. As a GIS professional and a tech data nerd, I think this is a very interesting project that Joe Battinelli and Julie Aldridge from the tax office are going to share with you tonight. So I'm going to get out of the way and let them come over and tell you a little bit about the 10-plus years of work they've put into improving our address data and how they went about doing that.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us. Yeah, so this is a joint project. We worked with Land Records, Julie's crew, and we're going to go through that right now. Yeah.
We began this project back in 2009. It's been a long, grueling process, but we did start with a match rate. That means the property address within our billing system versus what is the address on our GIS map. Okay. We worked with the software vendor of the billing system to create a more efficient way for us to be able to enter the address and it be a validated address versus what the address showed on the map. So we've come a long way.
And just to expand upon that, so we have, in our tax database, we have the property address where the property exists, and then we have a mailing address for where the bills are delivered to. And this is the property address specifically. Within our, just to mention, within our system, our tax system, BITEC, we do validate the mailing address against USPS to reduce, mailing returns and all those kind of errors. But our GIS is the address repository of record. So the property address is actually validated now against the GIS. And we also, in this process, we've identified ones that if they don't click on that property, they would never see, like that the address. It only happens when you actually edit the address in our tax system. So we wanted a way to look at those addresses.
Yes.
Outside of that. So yeah, obviously 2009 was before my time here at the county. I got here in 2014, December 2014, yeah. It's been a while, but it definitely, this project was one that like I came into and I was like, let's see if we could help. So what is this process that we have? It is a manual process. We have the dashboard that we're going to get to that compares candidates for cleanup. So it looks at the addresses and it looks at is it on the same property? Is it on the same parcel? And does it have the same address number? we started with address number because if the address numbers are the same, the rest of the address should match. That's a reasonable conclusion there. But we found that that really did not happen all the time. So I really want to really highlight how impressive it has been to work with Julie in this process. It cannot be overstated how important she has been to this. A lot of times, if you don't have a motivated civil servant, there isn't change in government. You see stuff just continue the way it always was. But Julie wanted to do something, and we wanted to help her. And I worked with Matt Saunders, our database guru in IT, and we were able to work with Julie. We met several times to work on this dashboard. And in the background here on this side, you can see that in 2018, when we started working on this for documentation, we were under 70,000 addresses that matched. Now, for reference, we'll get to exactly how many addresses are in the GIS and in our tax system, but just know that it went up 20,000. We are now matching on over 20,000 more than we did when you started documenting and automating this process of documentation. So that brings us up to present day. We were really hoping to get to 95% before we presented to you, but it's still a pretty good success story. We're getting closer every day. Julie's crew is working really hard on this, and we appreciate all the work that they're doing. So as I mentioned, it matches on the address number and the parcel. And it also, one of the important things in this project that we didn't foresee at the beginning was a feedback loop for our addressing coordinator at the county. So Brandy here at the county, and then at the City Concord and the City of Kannapolis, we've come up with a lot of questions about addresses, like, this doesn't look right, and we have it here as this address in our tax system, and in some cases, the tax system was actually the actual address. And we are able to feed that back and improve the GIS as well as our tax database. Here's the actual dashboard that I've been talking about. So we have just, you could see that we're making a lot of progress. It has the list of addresses that might be an issue on the right that have the same address number and the same parcel, but there's other fields that don't match. And that could happen, like, the addresses you see, like Union Street South. If South is not in the post-directional, it is in the pre-directional, we're going to flag that. There was a lot of those. There's a lot of false positives as well, where we see with unit numbers, where they have the same address, but it's a different unit number. So that's something we're going to work on, identifying those as well going forward. And next steps. So we're going to we're comparing from our BITEC, our tax database, to the GIS, and the next step is to go from our GIS back to the BITEC to see what addresses do we have that are not there at all yet. And they have a primary address that they can mark, as well as an additional address. So there's a lot of addresses we could probably help identify that could be added to the system for data match. So yes, the goal is 100% in this comparison, and then moving forward and finding a new way to look at the data so that we can clean it up even more. But yeah, any questions on that? I know it's technical.
So did I understand that correctly? You started at 33% match and you're now to,
94.4, yes.
That's correct.
huge. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. It has been a career goal of mine.
Don't have any questions, but I would say from the realtor perspective, that's gonna be a huge help, because when you did go look on Union Street and it was difficult, and there's other similar situations that this will be extremely helpful for, so Glad you had that as a goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you, so other than sending it out the tax bills to the correct address, what are the other benefits of what you guys are doing? And I think Ms. Honeycutt.
Well, as Diane
said
stated,
that.
the
So what are, how do our other
realtors, the
departments
realtors and.
operate?
Yeah, absolutely. The real estate industry, the attorneys, the paralegals, it's beneficial to them when they do their title searches. It's also beneficial to the personal property area, that we have the correct property address so that they can assess personal property or business personal property items if it is at that location. And just the general public to know that their property address, they're being taxed for the correct property. So,
This is gonna allow us to do more comparisons between the systems as well,
Right.
to automate some of that tax, billing for personal property.
I don't have a question either, but I do, just a quick comment, and I'll put my cheerleader hat on. When you said that it takes a dedicated civil servant to make change in government, that is true, and that's not unique to government. I mean, it's a lot easier to just coast and go under the radar and hope you don't get noticed and nobody asks you any questions. And that happens every day in the private sector too. That's not just civil service. And a wise person once told me that if you're coasting, you're only going one way. The only thing you're doing is going downhill. So I am ecstatic to know, and it comes as no surprise. You know, for as long as I've been sitting here, we hear the amazing things that you all do every day. So I'm ecstatic to know that the dedication you've got to set your mind to a goal to improve as much as you have and to not rest. I mean, 94 is great, and it'd be easy to say, well, you know, we've done all we can do, and you want to keep going. So that is phenomenal. So my hat's off to you, and thank you for all that. For as Commissioner Honeycutt said, there's a lot of professional people in the community that need this information, and we're making it better and easier to access. So thank you. I'll take my cheerleader hat off
thank
now.
you.
Yeah, I would just like to follow up and say thank you for your dedication and, 2009 to now, I mean, you guys have never gave up. So I applaud your efforts on that, and I'm looking forward to seeing this completed, and kudos to both of you for working so hard. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, we move to our discussion items for action. First up is 4.1, appointments to boards and committees, and you have all received a report of those. I really like the fact that we do our appointments as part of our consent agenda, but we don't talk about them as much as we used to, which is very effective from a time management standpoint. But I was talking with Lauren earlier today, and I think there are about 30 different boards and committees that we make appointments to. And so wanted to say that for the benefit of the public. There are always vacancies, and we encourage people to get involved, and all of those boards are listed on our website, along with instructions as to how to submit an application. So we encourage people to do that, and I'll probably repeat this again at our regular meeting, but of those 30 boards that we make appointments to, we also make appointments to our Board of Commissioners members, and I think that's somewhere between 36 and 40 different boards and committees that each of us serve on. So I think that sometimes the public doesn't realize that it's not just these meetings that they see us on television at, but each of us have 6 to 10 other appointments that and meetings that we attend as well. So thank you to everyone for your dedication. I think tonight we're talking about the Agricultural Advisory Board and the Home and Community Block Grant Advisory Committee, and we have recommendations on both of those. Does anybody have any questions or discussions on any of those?
Steve, we also have one on planning and zoning.
That's right, we do
Skip
have
one.
one planning and zoning as well. Okay, well, if there's no further discussion on that, we'll move to item 4.2, Cabarrus County Mortgage Assistant Program revisions, and we're happy to hear from Rodney Harris on that item.
So as you know, 4 months ago, you approved the creation of a local mortgage assistance program. We set aside up to $5 million of our American Rescue Plan funding for that purpose. Unfortunately, there has not been the level of interest we expected. So over the last 4 months, we've received less than 30 applications total. And as of today, we just actually approved our first applicant. So that's the first applicant in 4 months. So because of that lack of interest, and then also some state level homeowners assistance that they just launched that offers up to $40,000 of assistance, we're recommending some changes to our local program. And so you'll see in your agenda that we're recommending reducing the allocation from $5 million down to $750,000. That would be $675,000 for direct assistance and another $75,000 for Prosperity Unlimited to administer the program. We're recommending reducing the maximum award amount from $35,000 down to $7,000 per homeowner. We're also, because of that lower award amount, recommending eliminating the loan forgiveness portion of this, which required them to basically stay in their home for an additional 10 years in order to not owe the money back. And then the last part is just aligning with the final rule, which is increasing the income eligibility from 80% of area median income to 300%. And so those are the changes being recommended and that we are hoping you will approve. And then just for the public, and I'll read this out, the county program can be accessed either by email, by emailing appointment@prosperitycdc.org. That's appointment@prosperitycdc.org. Or they can call 704-933-7405. That's 704-933-7405. And then the state's North Carolina Homeowner Assistance Program can be accessed online at www.nchaf.gov or by calling 855-696-2423.
So Ronnie, I'm just curious, of the applicant that got approved today, do you know what the dollar amount was for that?
The total amount is about $27,000. And our finance folks are still verifying that. About $5,000 was past due HOA fees,
Okay.
and then $22,000 for mortgage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that one, that was the first one to be approved. There will be others to follow. Or I guess part of my question is, how many applications have been filed that ultimately may not be approved? Or-
We don't think there are any more in the current queue that would be eligible. With these revised guidelines, we think we'll get more interest from potential applicants.
Right.
What's the number one, is there a number one disqualifier that really kicks out the bulk of the application?
It's been a lot of income. A lot of them are above the income requirement.
And these changes lower that, or?
They increase the
Increase-
household income. So it goes from 80% of AMI to 300%.
So that's a huge,
Yeah, it
Change.
expands the pool.
Oh, not,
And that's our rule, or that's?
That's the federal.
Okay, that's the part okay.
yeah. So these changes that we are approving are just ratifying federal changes
So
that have
the only
occurred?
federal rule that we're required to go by is the area median income number, going from 80% to 300%. The rest of it is local decision-making that we've set as the parameters for our program.
Right.
I was gonna say, I think the repayment over a 10-year, the 10-year period, that forgiveness will make a difference too, because
Yeah.
so many people don't stay in their home 10 years anymore, you know, and then they'd have to pay it back, so.
Especially having that long a tie-in to such a smaller dollar amount, yeah, so, yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, any other questions on that one? Okay, we'll move to 4.3, intent to pursue public-private partnership for library and senior center, and Rodney has that one as well.
So I will start with this one, and then others can chime in. So as you know, we've been talking for a while about a critical need for a library in a senior center in the western portion of the county. Unfortunately, we do not own an appropriate parcel for this to go on, and we have not been able to identify in the open marketplace an option for this particular site. So we are asking you tonight to approve us pursuing a public-private partnership, which is authorized under state law, where we would submit a request for qualifications from developers that are interested in working with us to build this facility. We would post that tomorrow, assuming that you approve this evening, and that would be open for about 10 days as we wait for those developer proposals. We would go through a review process and then ultimately bring back to the board in March or April a recommendation for a developer partnership. And then we would also have to take this to the local government commission to get their approval, because there's an option to purchase. They consider it a debt. Anything, questions?
Of course, we have talked about this some in the past as well, so it's not a new thing. And there is a request for us to suspend the rules to vote on this tonight. So if there are no additional questions, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Wow.
All opposed, no. That motion passes.
Just for clarification, this is the Afton location, correct?
Area.
Yeah, Afton area location, or an area that we're looking at. Okay, or the west side. likely.
Okay. If there are no additional questions, I would entertain a motion to approve using the public-private partnership delivery method to address the critical need for a library and senior center in the western portion of Cabarrus County.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Shue, a second from Commissioner Strang. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That passes unanimously. We move now to item 4.4, Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County Sewer Service Agreement, and Jonathan has that item.
Thank you, and I'll introduce this and see if Mr. Cook has anything he wants to add. But the bond counsel for the Water and Sewer Authority, Cabarrus County, contacted Rich because as we're going to expand the Rocky River Waste Treatment Plant, of course, there's going to be debt issuance for that. And in preparation for that, they realized there wasn't an agreement between all the member jurisdictions and WASAC to treat the waste that is transmitted to that plant. And obviously, expanding that plant brings on that expense, and it's paid for by the fees charged back to those jurisdictions when the wastewater is sent there and treated. So this agreement simply codifies what is already happening, and I'm really not sure where else it would go for treatment, but it's just something they felt was necessary to put in place, memorialize here, and so they've asked that each of the jurisdictions that are members of WASAC adopt this sewer service agreement.
Questions for Jonathan? Okay, thank you. Next is item 4.5, low-income energy assistance, additional funding. And we have Laura Leip with us virtually for that item.
Good afternoon. So I'm here tonight to present two different budget revisions or budget amendments for our low-income energy assistance program. The first one is a second funding authorization. I was there in December with our initial allocation, but since then we have received a second allocation. So I wanted to present that tonight in the amount of $3,176. And again, that is 100% federal funding. So our grand total for LEAP for this season is $670,275. And county share is not required. So I just wanted to present the second allocation for that program.
Great.
The second one I have is for, again, LEAP, but it is under the American Rescue Plan Act with our ARPA dollars. They have approved Cabarrus County to have pandemic funds in the amount of $879,378. The funds will be automatically authorized for households with children ages 0 to 10. Those will be a priority. And in those households, they do have to be receiving our food and nutrition benefits and have to have received LEAP last fiscal year. So it is twofold, but we will be prioritizing children that are ages 0 to 10 in those households. They'll be automatically authorized and payments will be generated based on their primary heating source. So $300 for wood, $400 for gas, and $500 for electric. The allocation is from December of 21 and runs through May of 22. So it will close out with this fiscal year. It is 100% federal money and no county share is required for this one either.
Laura, do we have that information
Yes.
on the second one? Did you
It's
find?
way down, yeah. Yeah, you have a rather lengthy, but the last page shows,
It's just not showing on the cover sheet, I guess.
yeah, I believe it shows it all.
The first round is going to be $112,200, and that will be on this week's check run for the initial allocation that has already been approved. So I'll just let you guys know that in advance. That'll be going out on this week's check run.
Did you find? Did everyone else find that information, or did you have questions of Laura? It's a lot of numbers.
I'm not seeing the second one. I didn't either. Laura, we see the first one, the 3,167, but I don't see any kind of documentation for the second one you just described.
Okay, sorry about that. That was the pandemic, the ARPA dollars. I can connect with one.
Okay, so just if you could send that to us and we can get it out to the board prior to the,
For the
meeting.
regular meeting,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it should have been included in the packet, so I'll double check on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Laura? There'll be more information coming on that. Thank you. Okay, we move to item 4.6, fee increase for dedicated event coverage for EMS, and we're happy to have Jimmy Lentz with us virtually.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the option to attend virtually. We're coming to you for the month of February meeting with a proposal to increase the dedicated event fees for entities that request specific coverage or dedicated event coverage of an EMS ambulance, and then events of certain size get an EMS administrator. We started looking at this several years ago, and we didn't feel like at the beginning of the pandemic was a good time to be asking folks, and it's been a moot point for 2 years because we hadn't had any real demand for coverage, but we are getting back to more of our typical request, and we're certainly hoping that remains the same. The previous or the currently existing fee is $82 an hour for a staffed paramedic level ambulance and $28 an hour for an EMS administrator. Those fees have been in place since September of 2015. When we started this conversation a few months ago, we did do some research with neighboring counties and neighboring agencies because we certainly wanted to be competitive, and truthfully, we wanted to be somewhat on the low side of that. So we settled on the proposal of changing to $125 an hour for a staffed paramedic ambulance and $50 an hour for an EMS administrator. The reason we are coming to you in February instead of doing it with budget times, being that we're right in the middle of budget prep and entry, is there are some potential events in the spring that by making this effective on March 1st would be able to capture, and we did have interest in capturing it for those events. So that's a very brief description of what we're wanting to do. I'll certainly entertain any questions.
Questions for Jimmy?
Glad you're keeping up with that, Jim. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, thank you.
So, Jimmy, what would an event be that would require that an ambulance be there? What's the majority of your request?
The very common request comes from these obstacle athletic competitions, mud runs. Several different vendors utilize rural county areas and farms for that. Have 4 or 5 of those a year. And some larger spectator for-profit events, we do, there is reimbursement involved in those as well.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, sir. Okay, we move to item 4.7, Needs-Based Public School Capital Fund Grant Application. And we're happy to have Wendy Hagler with us for that item.
Hello. So the county, along with Cabarrus County Schools, would like to submit an application for the Needs-Based Fund, or Needs-Based School, Public School Capital Fund. This was established in 2017 to assist low-wealth counties with their critical public school building capital needs. And the criteria was revised, and now Cabarrus County is eligible. So we would like to submit an application. You can receive up to $50 million for a high school. So we would like to submit an application to use the funds for the replacement of Northwest Cabarrus High School. This high school is in our current capital improvement plan for FY22 and FY24. If we receive the grant, we could move the opening up from August of 2026 to August of 2025. There is a 25% match, but the current cost of the school is $102 million, and this would, so we would, we have over a 50% match with this. The applications are due March 15th, and we will find out mid-April if it's awarded, and at that time, if we're awarded, we could do it a budget amendment and an updated project ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seems like a no-brainer. If they're willing to send it to us, because if we don't do it, we've got more than 100% match.
Right.
Exactly.
It's all on us. So, no, thank you.
So what is the process? I mean, are all of these, is it pro rata? They will all be granted, or are there some criteria that some are granted and others are not? Or how comfortable do we feel that we will be successful in this application?
Do you want to speak to this one?
I don't think we have a true sense because this is a recent change, but they do have evaluation criteria. They will get priority to Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties, so that puts us a little bit behind the 8 ball, but they also are looking at student growth populations, which is beneficial to us, and some other factors. So really, we don't know, but as Brian and Tim back here can tell you, so it says $102 million in your agenda. I think the current budget for this project is $112 million total. So with construction prices the way they are, the project costs just keep escalating, and I think it's worth a shot to try to get this funding.
Right, great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to item 4.8, update on capital project fund budget and related project ordinance, and Wendy has that one as well.
Okay, I have a lot going on in this one agenda item. So the first item is the schools would like to move $66,905. This was originally budgeted for early college mobile units, and they would like to move that and move it, use it at Mount Pleasant High School mobile units to update the board. And the second item is we're allocating the state budget allocations. So we received $7.5 million for the courthouse and $30 million for a mental health facility. So we'll be budgeting that in the county capital project fund. We're also budgeting all the loan proceeds. This will be for our second draw program that we will open, I guess, in May. There are several items already budgeted, but the items budgeted on this budget amendment is $38 million for our Brown McAllister Elementary School, 5.9 for ball field replacements for northeast Cabarrus, and 7.8 million for several roof replacements, and there's a parking and drive replacement at Mount Pleasant High School. 4.26 million for Northwest Cabarrus High School architect. And the last thing on the budget amendment is we're budgeting $500,000 in additional road construction for Roberta Road Middle School, and we are, to offset that, we are budgeting NCDOT funds because we expect to be reimbursed for those expenditures. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Wendy? Okay,
All
thank
right,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Okay, next up is item 4.9 from the Fire Marshal, Fire Study and Fire District Boundary Modifications. And we are happy to have Jacob Thompson to talk about that item. And he is with us virtually.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for taking the time to sit through this and listen this afternoon. So as you all know, in the last year, 2020, the county had completed a fire protection survey. A third party come in and assess the county's fire protection to look at needs and issues in the short term and long term, as well as make recommendations to the provisions of fire services and look at making sure that we're doing the best things we can to protect our citizens and doing that in the most efficient manner possible. Lauren, I don't know if you have the slides up or not. I can't see them from my end, so. Ooh, there we go. So again, completed in September 2020. With COVID and everything, it's kind of put us a little bit behind the 8 ball with implementing and getting on the road with some of these changes, but with a little bit of time it takes to get some of those developed as well. So we're now kind of picking up the pace on that. Lauren, if you would go ahead and switch over to the next slide. So one of the recommendations that came out of the study was on boundary changes. So essentially, this recommendation was basically telling us to look at where our fire stations are located versus where our district lines are at. Again, for the simple fact of making sure that the closest units are responding to emergencies. So the recommendation was for a countywide assessment. The recommendation that we're bringing you today is just dealing with the southern portion of the county, and we'll talk about why here in just a minute. But just going through some of the reasons and backing for this is, one, just being in line with national standards. 2, deployment efficiency. So when I say deployment efficiency, basically what we mean by that is getting the biggest bang for our buck, doing the best by our taxpayers and their dollars, and making sure that we're using our resources in the most efficient manner without over-resourcing. ISO scores. So ISO being the Inspection Insurance Service Office is what that stands for. Basically, our fire departments are graded by ISO, and the better the score they have, the better rates that the citizens receive on insurance for living in that tax district. So with ISO, one of the factors that plays into that is the efficiency. We call it deployment analysis. But it's the efficiency of how well a fire district or fire department cover the areas of its district within a certain amount of time. So by recentering the fire districts around where fire stations are located, it improves that efficiency and increases those ISO scores. And then last but not least, and this is kind of where the rubber meets the road, and that's response times. So 70-80% of our calls now in the fire service are medical related. Medical related calls are a single unit response, so it would just be one. The majority of them are single unit response, so you would just be getting one fire engine. And so we want to make sure that those closest units are getting to those emergencies as fast as they can to answer those calls. A cardiac arrest event, the chance of survival reduces 10% for every minute that care is not rendered. And so, again, just stressing the importance of getting people, making sure we're doing what we can to get people on scene as quick as we can. Go ahead, Lauren, if you want to switch over. So again, the area that we're speaking about today is on the southern portion of the county. And again, we'll talk about why here in just a second, why we're starting with this versus the county. One thing I want to point out is with this particular proposal today, Allen Fire District and Georgeville Fire District in this have a very, very small impact. The main impact of this proposal will be between Flow Store, Harrisburg Rural, and Midland Rural Fire Districts. Lauren, if you will, go ahead and switch over. Okay, the map you see in front of you, and I'll also preface this with the maps that you're going to be seeing in the slides today are attached to the agenda item, as well as additional maps. Each individual fire district's attached to that agenda item. Those are online, available for the public to see if they would like to see those. And I've also, for the commissioners that are in the meeting room there, these two maps are on the wall for you to take a closer look at if you'd like to do so. So one thing that I just wanted to call everybody's attention to in showing this map is you can see the station locations on that map. It's a small red dot from what I can see. But as you look closer on those maps that you have in your hand, you'll see that those red dots are the fire station location. Towards the middle of that map, there's a red dot, and that is Flow Source Fire Station. The blue area that we see, and this is the current fire districts as they sit today. Looking at that district, kind of what we're doing here is, in a simple form, is the elongated shape of that district is what we're addressing. And so if you look down closer to the bottom of the map, there's another red dot. That is Midland Fire Station 2. And so if you would, the construction yellow color is Midland's current fire district. And you'll see that there's areas of Flow Store that is in immediate proximity to the Flow Store Fire District. And that is what we're trying to address, is that, you know, we've got stations that are in place that can serve citizens in a closer manner in a quicker time frame, and that's what we're essentially addressing in a simple way. Lauren, please go ahead. So the map that you have now on the screen is the proposed fire districts. So this was after we ran assessments and looked at everything as far as where the fire stations are located in regards to travel distance and time frame. This is where the fire district boundaries fall if you put every single parcel in the closest fire district to the closest station. You'll see that, again, just looking at the shapes of the district, how it's more centered around where those fire stations are located. And that is essentially what we're trying to achieve, is being efficient as we can with getting people on scene and with our resources by being able to access everything in an equal manner. This map basically is, and again, Flow Store Fire District unfortunately sees the largest impact from this in this particular portion of the recommendation in the proposal. Any area in orange that you see on that map would be areas that would be stand to move out of Flow Storage District, and any areas in a green color are areas that they're actually picking up out of another district. And so there is gains and losses, but again, the goal is to get those fire districts centered around those station locations. And I'll also make mention at this point too, that this is an ongoing assessment. This is not something that we just do one time and that's the end of it. As we move through time, the additional stations are going to be added, whether it be for municipal growth or ISO recommendations because of demand. If we have an area that has a larger amount of residential area and the calls increase and ISO recommends an additional station, then these are things that we'll have to reassess going forward. Okay, Warren, you will give us a comment?
Hey, Jacob,
So,
Jacob,
Yes,
this
sir.
Mike, on your map, on the proposed fire districts, just for the board's clarification, inside the purple area, there are some orange areas, and they've got hashes through them. What does that mean?
So inside that blue district, which is close to those hash district there that you'll see, it's kind of yellow with some black lines through it. Those are areas that are actually in the town of Midland that Flow Store is contracting with to provide fire service for those particular parcels, just because they're closer than Midland Fire Department is. I'll also make this caveat about these maps as well, is for the clarity of just the visual presentation of the maps. There are municipal areas in both the purple and the yellow areas, which are both Harrisburg rural and Midland rural. And there's areas in there that are actually in the town of Harrisburg and Midland that are separate from these districts. Again, this is just for visual orientation to show you kind of what we're trying to achieve.
What
Mike,
is
does that
the
answer-
yellow, the big yellow spot in the blue, towards the top of the blue?
Yep, so that yellow, so that particular yellow spot is the city of Concord. So the city of Concord, those are annexation areas that the city of Concord has annexed. The light blue teal-looking color towards the top of the screen, that's Allen's Fire District. The brownish color to the right is Georgeville's Fire District. And the white little area that you see between the teal and the purple, that is the area that we contract with the city of Concord to cover in the county. So that's what those particular colors are. On those maps, there is a legend at the bottom that will kind of lay that out for you as well. So if you forget kind of what I had said, those are on there for your reference.
So the orange ones that are crosshatched, they contract with Flow Store to cover those. Does the city of Concord contract with Flow Store to cover that yellow patch up towards the top that I asked about?
No, sir, they do not. Just the area there with Midland is town of Midland is the area that's, as far as I know, that's the only area that they're contracted to cover. Concord still covers their area with their current resources. I will tell you that Concord has an additional station planned to move down this area. I don't know exactly where. I do know it's going to be located out here just for the sole purpose of, again, addressing their ISO numbers and to making sure that they have station close by to protect the areas that they've annexed. So I do know that's planned, I think, for the 25, 26 year time frame. But again, that's one of those things we'll have to address and kind of assess moving forward.
So Jacob, just to correct me and for the board, as you see as Chairman Morris said, in the middle of it looks purple to us, but I think you're calling it blue.
You're printed and one looks
Oh,
different.
okay. Okay, yeah. So where Midland does not have a town fire department, they are contracting with the rural volunteer department. So as they annex, they choose, or they're proposing to bring the Midland Fire Department with them to where they annex, whether it's in another district or not. They want to be served by the Midland Fire District. Just
Yeah,
want to make sure.
and that's a good point to point out. And again, this map doesn't show those annexed areas in particular, but Midland has expressed, as Mike said, the desire to contract with Midland within the areas that they can access that within those ISO boundaries. Again, that annexed area that's in the middle of Flow Store's district with the hash mark, that's a little bit outside of the most efficient way for the Midland Fire Department to access that, and that's why the town contracts with Flow Store for those areas. But any and all areas that they're annexing, they have expressed that their desire is going to be to contract with the Midland Fire Department to provide coverage for those areas, especially down in some of the areas that we're addressing closer to 24, 26. So looking, and I told you we would kind of talk about why we're looking to address this area now and then address the rest of the county moving forward into the next year. So the study itself made a point to point out this area as the greatest need, or the area of greatest need, and really kind of prompted that recommendation. And of course, the recommendation was to go ahead and assess the county as a whole, but this particular area is really what prompted that red flag to say, hey, you guys might want to look at this. It is one of the largest areas impacted by this particular issue. And there's such a disparity between what is proposed and what is currently in place that it really makes it a high priority area. Another thing to point out is just the continued growth and annexation. And as we just talked about, Midland and Harrisburg choosing to contract with those departments, Midland, and of course the town's going to provide its own fire protection, but the town of Midland contracting with the Midland Fire Department to provide coverage for those areas. The continued growth and annexation in those areas with the residential continuance in there, it's really creates an inconsistency in response areas. And again, the rapid annexation, those areas are being poured into those municipalities anyway. And so in making this change, it's just another way to address some of that change up front. I'll also, make mention of an annexation agreement, and I'll show you a map on the next slide, but an annexation agreement between the town of Harrisburg and the town of Midland that includes future land use planning. And it shows that these areas will continue to be absorbed into those municipalities. And then last, I wanted to touch on the town of Midland's resolution supporting the fire study recommendations. Again, making this priority. The town of Midland has expressed the wish for the commission to take action, particularly on this subject. And you all have a copy of that. And so I'm not going to get in real deep in that, but that was another reason we felt like it was a priority. I will point out that there is some greater than 5 mile areas still in the affected area. And so with this change, we do have several parcels that would see an immediate reduction in their insurance premiums. When I say greater than 5 miles, any department will get that primary ISO rating for areas less than 5 miles. If they're greater than 5 miles from a fire station in the district that they're covered by, they're rated at a 9 unless they get over 6. If they're between 5 and 6 miles, they're rated at a 9, and their insurance premiums increase significantly. And so we have several parcels within this area that would stand to see an immediate decrease in their insurance premiums by this change. So again, I mentioned the annexation agreement. So there's a black dotted line that kind of follows towards the middle of the screen. That is currently the annexation agreement line between Midland and Harrisburg. I will make mention that we did not use this as a reference point when we were making our changes. The changes do happen to fall close to this line, especially down toward the Morton Road area. But this was just, again, one of the reasons why we thought it was a priority. Again, we didn't use this. The changes themselves are based strictly off of what's closest, but it does happen to follow closely with this line in some of those areas. So just kind of wrapping up, I'll conclude by saying again that these recommendations are based strictly on who is closest to each parcel. I mean, that is it in a nutshell. All of our departments do a great job. None of these proposals are based off of one department being better than another. It is strictly based off of who can access our citizens the fastest. And just kind of give you a little bit of insight on how we went through this process. We sat down with the chiefs individually, collectively in the same room. I actually took a paper map, rolled it out on the table. I took my scale wheel and set it to the scale on the map, and we went road by road, station by station, area by area, and looked and walk through it collectively and look and see, okay, who is actually closer to what areas? And we have to take into account, there may be some roads that we're considering that they may not necessarily be able to get a fire apparatus down. So those were the things we had to sit down together and talk about. I will make point that when we come to you guys last year in November, I think it was, to give you an update on this recommendation, I had a point in there that said that OSFM would have to review the maps before approval. That has now changed. We received clarification, so OSFM does not have to review the maps before approval. They will just change it afterwards if the board decides to approve the recommendation. So I'll also make another note that if the changes are adopted, the changes will not go into effect until the turn of the fiscal year. So July 1, 2022 is when these changes will take effect. So at this point, what we're requesting of the board is, if it be the pleasure of the board, if they would like to move forward with recommendations at this point, would be a request to set a public hearing as required by law, and for the due diligence for the citizens for the March Board of Commissioners regular meeting. So that will be March 21st. We'll be, if the board chooses to set that public hearing, we'll be actually scheduled a time with C.C. Griffin Middle School to hold a public meeting prior to that on March the 8th. So we've got time reserved so that way we can get a little bit more information out. We'll be reaching out with online tools and several other resources to make sure that everybody's informed about the changes and we can answer any questions that anybody may have. So with that being said, if anybody has any questions, and I will also say that thank you to Tax Department and GIS. This is very, very labor intensive for GIS. We had a lot of meetings back and forth, and I just want to publicly thank them for their help. It is a very large labor burden on them to make all these changes in maps. So, but with that being said, if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer anything that I can.
I just had a quick question, Jacob. When did you say you were trying to schedule a public hearing at C.C. Griffin?
So it wouldn't be, that would not be the public hearing. It would just be a general public forum or public meeting.
Okay.
That was March the 8th.
March 8th?
Correct.
Okay.
And we're looking 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. for that meeting. And again, that's if the commissioners decide to move forward with a public hearing. We just want to make sure that if there's any personal questions, if somebody just, wants to have a face-to-face conversation about any of this, that they would like clarification, we're going to be there and be available to answer those questions for those folks face-to-face. It is a very large impact, and so we just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence by the citizens.
I want to make sure that I'm following the orange hashed that County Manager Downs brought up. So the orange hash area that's in the middle of the blue is the flow store. The map I'm looking at, I guess, is the draft proposed. So that orange hash is Midland Fire annexed area that they will continue to serve. They currently serve and will continue to serve.
So I'll make a clarification too. So even though the town of Midland and Midland Fire Department share the same name, the Midland Fire Department is still a independent nonprofit. They are not part of the town. And so those hashed areas out there in the middle of Flow Store's fire district is areas that the town of Midland has annexed that they contract with Flow Store to cover. Midland Fire Department has no dealings with those areas as it currently stands.
Okay.
And so,
well, that makes much more sense than what I thought I was understanding. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Okay, other questions for Jacob? Well, I think this provides a good opportunity, the explanation that we've received tonight, to have that public meeting on March the 8th would give anybody in any of those fire districts an opportunity to attend and ask questions. And then the public hearing that we would have on the 21st would be a second opportunity for them to provide input to us and provide any comments they might have. So it sounds like a good process, Jacob. Thank you for your efforts. So we do have, if we want to set that public hearing for March 21st, we would need to suspend the rules and vote to schedule that public hearing tonight. So if it is the pleasure of the board, I would accept a motion to suspend the rules of procedure.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. And Commissioner Kiger, you look like you had a question.
Well, I'm just wondering why we can't set it at our regular meeting for the next regular meeting.
I think because of the time limitation, is that correct? Like, we have to give notice more than,
the normal time for
Yeah.
our public hearings.
right. So if we set it for our regular meeting, that would only be 2 weeks from now.
I was sort of making that assumption as well. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't put the question, but I must have been deep in thought.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, if it is the pleasure of the board, I would entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for our March 21st, 2022 regular meeting to provide public input on these changes. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you all.
Okay, we move now to item 4.10 from Infrastructure and Asset Management, utility easement request at the Infrastructure and Asset Management Operations Center. And Kyle Billifer will talk with us about that one.
Greetings. We have one outstanding utility item from the Cabarrus County Infrastructure and Asset Management Operations Center renovations that we did at 484 Cabarrus Avenue West. Part of the conditions of approval included a conveyance of a public utility easement to encompass the 8-inch public water main and water service meters from the city of Concord, and that's right on the Ramden side of the building. The city has a standard easement form. Our legal team has reviewed it and approved it, and that's what I'm asking for approval to execute that easement, take it back to the city.
Is that an easement for the water line that services that building?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay. Next item, 4.11.
Before you move on, Jonathan, do we need to talk about the road here or give an update? Have you got any responses from your?
Yeah, one of the reasons we're needing to dedicate this easement is there is no right-of-way associated with that, no public right-of-way associated with that section of Ramden Court. The section between Cabarrus Avenue and Cascade is private, is actually part of our property. So we have sent letters to the property owners indicating that we've had continued discussions with the city of Concord about that and about them taking that road over. There will be some additional expense to the county if that occurs. So we're trying to work out a solution to that with the city and with those property owners on the northern portion of Ramden. And it's odd that the portion of Ramden beyond Cascade is publicly maintained. And you're aware there are a number of warehouses there and quite a bit of truck traffic that runs through here, so there's a lot of wear and tear on this road. But at this point, I think I sent the letter, Kyle, 10 days ago?
Yes, sir.
And not heard anything from any of the adjacent owners. I don't know, Kyle, if you have.
No, sir.
Yeah.
So the option, the other option is to close that as a private road, and therefore they would have to redirect their truck traffic to a new location. So once if they get the letter, you may start getting a few calls. That's what it's about. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that in case. And if you want more detail, just give us a call and we can show you the maps and talk to you a little bit further. But there's how many warehouses back there?
It's 4 different locations.
Four warehouses for local companies here that run a lot of tractor trailer trucks through the middle of the property. And so there could be some issues.
And
No
we have-
idea at all as to why that evolved that way, that there was,
Going back and looking at a lot of these parcels were not platted in the standard manner because of the size, I guess, but there is a note on one of the property maps that's recorded that the city took over that other section of Ramden in the mid-90s, but have not found any explanation why they did not take over this section. And if you're familiar with it, an S&D is probably the major user there with trucks running all day long up and down that road. When they get down to Cabarrus Avenue, because of the geometry of that intersection, they can't turn right to go back towards 601. They have to go left, then down to the traffic circle, loop around, and then head back to 601. The alternative is that they use Cascade, and if you're familiar with that road, that's just not a very good alternative. So we would love to work out a good solution with the city of Concord.
In addition, we already have an easement with the stormwater control measure. So if you look at that diagram where the box is around the utility, if you go above about, a foot on the page, you can see the stormwater control or the pond that's right along that. So we already have an easement with the city on that, specifically same type of reason.
and I would imagine this is gonna become more important when we continue the development on the opposite side of that street.
We take bids in the first week of March for the emergency equipment warehouse and ITS building on the other portion of that parcel, which is Plan Right. And in those, the project manual, we've required the contractor to leave one lane of that road open, which will prove very difficult because the substructure that goes across the road that carries the stormwater from one side to the other side of the parcel. So we'll end up with steel plates across that road. But yes, we're maintaining one lane of traffic. One of the adjacent warehouse owners, the owner of the S&D or West Rock Coffee or whatever it may be, it's not the company that owns it. It's an individual gentleman that leases it to West Rock. They wanted us to provide flaggers and leave both lanes open and be able to have traffic consultation on there during the entire part of the project, but we advised them that that would not be economically feasible for the project. But yes, if you've noticed the amount of truck traffic, between the traffic coming out from the operations center, ambulances, police cars, and the amount of trucks on there, and a construction site that you'll have a lot of equipment on the side of the road doing work, it's going to be, it'll be a concern.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we will move to kitchen equipment.
This is a little bit of an interesting one. On December 30th, 2021, Infrastructure and Asset Management received an email from Alan Lark with the Weber City Volunteer Fire Department in Weber City, Virginia, requesting consideration of a free donation of 2 pieces of kitchen equipment. Infrastructure and Asset Management was advertising these 2 South Bend natural gas griddle ranges on govdeals.com that were original pieces of the equipment purchased for the jail housing package. They were present in the actual kitchen that provides the food for the inmates. Both units are in good condition and have been relatively unused over the past several years, which is why we had them on surplus, meaning the staff that prepares all that food does not use this equipment in any of their preparation. So it was taking up footprint. So we've become, since we're past our 10-year mark on that building, we're starting to go through and evaluate the actual equipment, replace equipment, and also bring in, dare I say, auxiliary and backup equipment of their primary use so that we're not getting weekend calls to go down there and fix things. So we've kind of been going through this process, and we decided to surplus those and put those on GovDeals. Each unit was being listed with a starting price of $2,500 each. The Weber City Volunteer Fire Department saw these items on GovDeals and wants to utilize them in a building that they've recently acquired and are renovating for a new fire station, which will be equipped with a commercial-grade kitchen. I did speak to this gentleman, and I also spoke to the chief of that volunteer fire department, because obviously I know nothing about Weber City, so I want to do my due diligence. It is completely legitimate, and their request is legitimate. We're not the only folks that they've asked for equipment for their kitchen. They had said they would come pick up the equipment. We had no bids on the months that it was listed on GovDeals, but it has not been up there for over a year. It's only been up there for 2 months now. But we've had no bids. We did have another piece of equipment that was quickly snatched up in the first month. So I don't know if it's I don't know anything about industrial kitchens. I don't know if griddles are not used anymore or why. But really, to bring this in front of the board to entertain, is this something that the board would like me to pursue? And yes, I understand this is a difficult decision. Yes, yes it is.
I don't think it's that difficult. Just tell them to come pick it up.
And I agree with Commissioner Kiger.
When I saw it, I gave them a really, definitely out of the norm, but I'll give them kudos for grasping, and I agree with Diane's way. You don't get it.
Well, per the policy that we would have to ask the board for this decision, so.
Any other questions or comments on that item? The pieces of equipment, have they been removed from the jail, or they?
Yeah. Anything we surplus, we take out of the site and store at our warehouse. That's why
Right.
we don't have so much footprint there. But yes, we took them out and actually tried to clean them the best that we could and take care of them and get them in a position so they're shrink wrapped on a pallet, ready to go.
Right.
So the current food vendor does not use them?
Neither the current food vendor nor the previous food vendor. And from what I can gather, from third party to fourth party to fifth party, they've only been utilized about the first week that the kitchen was in line. So, I Googled it and I really couldn't tell you, to be
It
honest.
is just north of Kingsport, Tennessee, so it is in western Virginia.
Yeah,
It's not
oh.
as far west as Jonesville, but it's getting towards that juncture of Tennessee, Virginia, and Kentucky.
Yeah, that reminds me, one other interesting fact. The gentleman that reached out to me, who's a volunteer there, actually works for a local county government in Tennessee. He goes over the border each day, and I believe he is in their emergency operations center. So that is kind of how he found me, was via LinkedIn, and then got in touch with me that way.
I guess the only concern that I would have, or reservation, would be if there were some local organization like the Boys and Girls Club that uses griddles on their pancake day, but to the best of my knowledge, I think they've got that down to a science.
I've never been asked for such equipment. Vehicles is typically vehicles and furniture is what local folks come to us for.
Right, right.
Historically, if we have equipment like this in surplus, with kitchen crate, kitchen item, how long does it usually sit in surplus? Does it go-
Depends. It depends on what it is. I mean, we put it up on GovDeals right away, so everything goes up on GovDeals for 30 days, comes down, then goes back up if we don't get any bids on it. I've held certain things for probably a year. I had some sort of very small wine cooling mini fridges from the arena that we had 6 of them, and we sold 4 immediately, and then I had the other 2 just hang around until they sold.
Yes, and so you too can go on govdeals.com and make purchases.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, so I guess the word that I would put out on this one, based on what I've heard from the board, this item will go on our consent agenda for our regular meeting in 2 weeks. So if there is anybody locally that has interest in them, they should contact us prior to that time or come to our meeting as well. So we will move now to item 4.12, temporary easement for building adjacent to parking garage. Kyle.
Yes, sir, thank you. The mixed-use building, Novi Flats, that is being constructed next to the county parking deck, needs an additional easement from the county. There's already a water easement and a generator easement that have been approved by the Board of Commissioners during the June 2021 regular meeting. This easement is for the placement of temporary fencing and the subsequent closing of approximately 190 parking spaces at the deck for the duration of the vertical construction of the component that could last up to 18 months. This is to prevent any potential falling items from striking parked vehicles. So this would be the parking spaces on each level as you go up on the bar brick side, the one row. And then when you get to the 5th floor, or the top level of the parking deck, the open air area, we will shut that entire level down because of the vertical component of the building. The Novi Flats is much taller than our parking deck, and if that was to fall, there would be considerable damage. More importantly to people and cars, but also to our parking deck.
Have you counted or looked or walked at those, I mean, the 190, is that the reasonable number? I mean, did you verify, is that their number or our number?
That's me going through the prints and getting pretty close on
Okay.
all the spaces
That's
they
what I
have to
wanted to know.
close.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
We actually provided the diagrams for them, and it's in the attachment on the easement. We provided the bulk of the verbiage that goes into the easements and all the exhibits.
Having been at the parking deck at 8 o'clock this morning in the freezing rain, I did have to realign my plans because of all the parking spaces that were already marked off. And this basically is the same thing, except adding all of the top deck, right?
Correct. What they've had them marked off with cones. They've had a construction imager, actually one of the same companies we're using across the street, named Multivista, come in and basically take captures or pictures of all those parking spaces, because I suspect they're concerned that I will accuse them of damaging the parking spaces and trying to get money out of them. So that's why those are marked off. And then eventually there will actually be construction fencing that goes up on that.
But it's the same parking places.
It is.
So
It's
they're
absolute-
already marked
yes.
off.
Yes, they
Yeah.
are. Yes, they are. The 5th floor is probably the biggest inconvenience, and I would imagine it's actually probably a bigger inconvenience to the folks that go up there, more so on the weekends, only because we have the surveillance cameras. We see, an impromptu football game, or maybe someone goes up there and just eats their lunch, a
Right.
couple that goes downtown and gets their lunch, just when it's nice out. So that happens more often than you would think. I would think that would be the biggest impact.
Right. Well, we are very happy to see that development occurring there. And I think even when our early discussions about the parking deck, we knew that this was in the plan.
Yes, sir. And we'll have another easement coming in the next month. It'll be the reciprocal easement for the actual connection on the 5th floor, and that'll be something permanent. This is just temporary. Due to Kaufman and Lynn, who's the contractor building that, due to their very tight construction schedule, I am asking the board to suspend the rules and approve this easement tonight. And it should be noted that legal counsel has reviewed this.
Additional questions, commissioners? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules of procedure due to time constraints on this project. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. That motion passes, and I would now entertain a motion to approve the easement between Cabarrus County and Novi Flats LLC, and authorize the county manager to execute the easement on behalf of Cabarrus County, subject to review or revisions by the county attorney. Okay, we have a motion and 2 seconds. One from Commissioner Strang and one from Commissioner Shue. So we'll let the clerk decide which one she wants to write down. Any further discussion on this item? All in favor, please say aye. If all opposed, no. That motion passes unanimously. And we move now to item 4.13, Town of Midland and Cabarrus County Interlocal Agreement for Veterans Memorial at Rob Wallace Park. And Mr. Billifer again.
Thank you. During the design development of the Veterans Memorial constructed by the Town of Midland at Rob Wallace Park, the county declared the need for an interlocal agreement for the maintenance and scheduling of the memorial. County staff worked with legal counsel and the town of Midland on the agreement that is attached. After several revisions, the attached agreement was approved by Town of Midland Council, and it already has their signature on it. To summarize it, they're responsible for all hardscape and any type of renovations or repairs to any hardscape. Will handle vegetation, and if there's any safety complaints, whether it be for softscape or hardscape, the two parties will discuss. And I believe we actually put a timeline on serious safety concerns and how fast we had to act on those.
Questions on that item? All righty, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we move now to item 4.14, approval of budget amendment for the library, and Emery Ortiz is with us for that item.
Hello, good evening. This one is very, very easy. With the state passing its budget, there was an increase in state aid to libraries. And so our allotment of that was increased by $11,120.
It's very good news.
Yes, we'll always take money.
Thank you. Any question on that item? Well, then we'll move right along to updates to policies from the library.
Great, thank you. So this year we decided to try a new approach to do some internal policy review. It had been a while since that had happened. And we created multiple teams for different aspects of service for the library. So two of our teams, the public services team that deals mostly with teens and adults, and then the collection development team, both made suggested changes to these policies. I'm just going to hit the high points for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there was anything in the detail. So the circulation policy, I think the biggest change into that, this is how basically who's allowed to use the library, how you can use the library. The biggest change is that we are going to allow ages 13 and up to use the computers in the library now without having to explicitly have parental permission. So that was reviewed by legal, and it's basically treating the computers like we do most other library resources, which is we let parents make the decision as to how their children can engage with that. But when we're planning for services for the future, we wanted to make sure we could allow for some technology engagement with teenagers, since that's a big user group that we've been trying to reach. So that was the fundamental change in that policy. We also clarified recently, I think within the last year, the board did approve that we could allow library cards for students in Cabarrus County. And with that, because we require a parent or guardian to also have a library card with a minor, we just made sure that a parent was also allowed to get a card if they weren't strictly a Cabarrus County resident. So say a Cannon School student who may live in Mecklenburg County, they would be allowed to get a card, and then so would their parent. The next change is that card renewals will now be needed every 3 years instead of annually. This is more of a convenience, I think, for patrons. Most library users get very concerned when they get the email saying their library card is expiring. And that's just so we can keep our records up to date. But since we don't see as much movement around the county, we felt that 3 years was appropriate. And then exciting things for library users, we are increasing the Launchpad circulation to 2 per adult card. We got a lot of feedback that there were a lot of children fighting over those Launchpads, so now they can take 2 home and hopefully have less arguments there. And then we wanted to kind of change the language a little bit and account for some new types of circulating items, both that we currently have and that we're hoping to have in the future. As we build new libraries, we want to make sure we're, getting new technology in. We'd love to start circulating hotspots at some point. So just kind of those small language changes to make the scope of our materials more broad. Okay, so that was the circulation policy. Going to the collection development policy, this policy is basically explaining to people how we purchase library materials, kind of what goes into that, how we classify them. And most of the changes in this policy were just language. We changed the word patron to library user, just to make it a little bit more inclusive. We do serve a lot of people who don't necessarily have library cards, but maybe traveling from out of the area, and we want to make sure they're included in that. We did use some clarifying language for various processes. For example, the print materials section had every single category kind of separated out by age group when they overlap so much. So we just kind of simplified that and pared it down. So I think it went from like a 15-page document to a 7-page document just from that. Again, going back to the technology lending, added in some more clarifying language for that in terms of what is considered a returned item. So if you return a launch pad, let's say, and then forgot to return like the charger and the USB port, we would not consider it fully returned until we got those back as well. Just trying to account for all those materials. And then finally, we did include some information on the kind of virtual consortiums that we're a part of. So our very popular resources like Overdrive and Libby and Hoopla, a lot of times we subscribe to kind of a pool of collection development. And because of that, we aren't necessarily able to purchase individual items. We get a lot of requests from the public for things that we can't always get. So we wanted to make sure we were including that in there. Anyone is allowed to make a request, of course, and we explore all of those options. But for some of those, especially like Hoopla, we don't have individual purchase options. Questions about any of that? And then if this is approved, we're hoping that we could implement this March 1st, once we get all those software back-end changes done. And then the Library Board of Trustees did approve this at their January 20th meeting.
Questions for Emery? Well, I have frequently stated that the most important decisions that we make as commissioners are the amount of the past due library book funds. And you took that away from us last year.
I'm so sorry.
When you eliminated, I think a lot of people still don't know that
It's true.
that has been eliminated. No fines for past due library books. And
Correct.
tell us a little bit about what your experience has been since that policy was implemented.
Absolutely. You know, I'm really happy to report that we don't have a full year of data yet, but we've not noticed any negative impact from that. So what that would look like for us would be materials staying out far past their due date and us having to buy a lot of additional copies to meet up with demand. We haven't seen that happen at all. Most people have been thrilled once they do learn. And yeah, we're not seeing things stay out for much longer than was normal to begin with. So no problems there. And then with the additional, hopefully, measures to increase user just flexibility, we'll keep having people come back in.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Emery? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We move to item 4.16 from Planning and Development, Budget Amendment for Farmland Preservation Grant, and we're happy to have Kelly Sifford with us for that item.
Thank you. You may remember last year, the Soil and Water District applied for an easement for the Davis property. We did get word that we received that. So what this does is set up the funds, the accounts for the money, as well as amend the project ordinance. And we probably should have included, because there was some discrepancy in the usual language, we typically ask that you authorize the county manager to approve that at that time. It was just worded that it was going to come back to you, so just for clarity's sake, clear up that point, that the contract is also approved with Rich's approval, I guess. So I would ask that you amend the rules tonight and take action on this tonight. They did have a quick turnaround that we will barely meet.
Okay, questions for Kelly? We're suspending the rules a lot tonight. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules of procedure due to time constraints. Have a
I move for approval,
motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and I would now entertain a motion to adopt the budget amendment and project ordinance
And approve the contract.
and approve the contract. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And we move to 4.17, Home American Rescue Plan Project Proposal. And Kelly will present that as well.
So as we discussed, I think it was last month, that we are receiving funds from the American Rescue Plan, the home version of it. With that plan, we are receiving $578,000, and I had asked you at that time to kind of put some flexibility in my hands to pursue a project and figure out if we had something that we could work with. We believe that we're going to be able to work with CCM, Cooperative Christian Ministries. They have a proposed project that is in the very early stages. It is called a Huddle House project, and the idea is that it will have a center piece that is kind of a community house where there are larger kitchen facilities, laundry facilities, areas for them to do training, and smaller houses around it that are going to have like kitchenettes almost with they don't have a stove, but they have a refrigerator and a microwave, so that most of their meals would be prepared in the larger facility. So they're offering the time to get stabilized, to go through the training, to help them move toward homeownership or at least rental in the private market. So we are proposing that our $578,000 go to this project at this time. We will be also working with, I believe, the city of Kannapolis. They're taking that. They haven't gone to the board with it yet. They're in the process. I think they're going their next meeting. So we haven't gotten full agreement yet for that, but I believe that they will probably be participating as well on this project. We'd like to see this one move forward. This is an area that obviously, from the Homeless Task Force, we have been trying to meet these needs, so this is a really great opportunity to move that project forward.
Sounds like, oops.
I was just gonna say, where is the location?
I do not have the exact location. Jonathan and I were looking at they were given property literally.
Is it in the Rowan County
No,
section of
it is in
Kannapolis?
Cabarrus County. This is a different site than the original site we discussed.
Right.
The property was given to them in a very recent transaction, so I didn't include it because I wasn't sure if they had gotten everything finalized, but it is in Cabarrus County. It is not in Rowan County. It is in Kannapolis, I do know that.
I was just saying, I noticed you said it was in the early stages, and it sounds like obviously they're getting things in a row, but the funding aspect fits along that timeline. There's no requirements as far as the timeline for that or anything.
The timeline on the home money has been kind of weird. They said 5 years at first, then they said a 10-year time frame, and now they're saying indefinite. So I don't know exactly what that means, but I think that they plan to move forward fairly quickly with this, particularly if our funding is in place and Kannapolis participates. They will be very close to having enough funding to construct it, so they would just need to be generating their actual operational cost for this project.
Additional questions? I think this is another great example of public-private, faith-based partnership coming together to do good things in the community. I think it's an excellent opportunity.
And I'll be happy to give a detailed report once they get a little more of their plan together, but I think that, they did have a different site that they were looking at this same plan, and so that this is a new site, so I don't even have a site plan for this site, but, they had a good idea about what they wanted to do, so it's just a different site, so we'll get some information to you once we have a little more details, but I think it'll be a good project for us to participate in.
We want to make sure, I want to make sure that you guys, Are you giving it to the project, or are you giving it to the project at a certain location? And all that means is that we would not, if you want, do you want us to come back once they select a location to approve the location?
Well, so the narrative says they have obtained property, so that's not the site?
It is, like, it came in, the actual transfer of the deed happened like right around the time I was writing this. We were closing in on it, I believe. I don't have the exact address of the property. It is behind, what is the name of that street? It is behind a mobile home park, right near Forest Elementary in Kannapolis. Nob Hill Drive. It's behind Nob Hill Drive, so it's not accessed from Nob Hill, but it's accessed from Catherine, maybe?
We can get the address and make sure it's in the actual
Yes,
agenda
it is.
item prior to approval.
Yeah, we will definitely get you full details, but what this action was for was to tell HUD what our plan was. We have to report that plan out pretty soon, and so this is the first step. We're still not committed because the contracts haven't been drawn up. We haven't gotten the money from Concord even to start that process, so they did want to know what our plan was, so, and they did want board approval to move forward with it, so that's what we're doing tonight. And obviously, I will not go forward with a plan that's not located in Cabarrus County.
And just real quick to clarify, because there are two separate projects, this item deals with the huddle housing. When we approved our American Rescue Plan spending plan back in, I guess it would have been September, October, you allocated $2 million to go to CCM. That was for their homeless to housing project, which is more of a congregate setting. They are still looking for a site for that particular project and the funding needed to support that construction or renovation. So there are two separate projects, one that's supported earlier and then this one if approved.
And I did discuss it with Ed to make sure, because we were actually thinking the other project, and he thought that it would be a better fit for this project because they think they could probably move it faster.
And I think in answer to your question, I'll speak for myself. My approval would be for the project and the concept regardless of the location. Yeah. But sounds like we're gonna have the location before we vote on it, so.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I will get you more detailed plans and all of that as that we
Okay.
move, but this was unfortunately rushed into the first part of it, but like I said, this is just basically to tell HUD what we plan to do. This is not locking in anything at this point. We can amend plans with HUD at any time.
Very good. Any more questions? All right, we will move to item 4.18 from Planning and Development. Request to consider changing the name of Maravee Drive to Miller Park Lane. And we're happy to have Susie Morris with us for that item.
Good evening. We have not seen a request like this in a very long time, so as we go through this, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll try to kind of explain the basics of how it works for those of you that may not have seen one in the past. The county does have a process for someone to request a street name change. In this particular case, it is a private street. It is not a DOT-maintained street. So, you have seen some of those where the DOT roads, we have abandoned right-of-ways, we've changed street names. This process is a little shorter than that process, and it does not have to go to the Transportation Board in Raleigh. So we had a request come in from Ms. Trina Miller, and she is requesting that Maravee Drive be changed to Miller Park Drive. As part of that, there is some documentation that has to be submitted, and that includes a petition that has to be signed by at least 51% of the people who live adjacent to that street. Mainly, that process is put into place so that people will understand there's a potential that their address could change if it's a successful petition. So what you see on the screen is actually Maravee Drive and also the adjacent property owners. So Ms. Miller did obtain all of the signatures that are required. So the next step would be to move forward with the noticing, and there are state statutes that govern the noticing for these type of requests. So it will have to be advertised in the newspaper. We have to put 2 signs up on the street, and then we also have to send out letters to the adjacent property owners. So because of that, like the fire item that you had earlier, we're requesting that the public hearing would be set for the March 21st meeting versus the February meeting to make sure that we can meet all of those requirements. Once that petition goes through, and if it is approved by the commissioners, then we would work with the applicant and the other people who live along the street to assign the new addresses. In this particular case, Ms. Miller is the only one that is impacted by the address change. She owns 2 other lots that are currently vacant, and the houses that are along Merivee actually are addressed from Blossom. So unless those properties were subdivided, their address is not going to change, and we would assign a new address at that time. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I just have one question. The name change is only, it's not gonna include Norma Drive?
No, that cul-de-sac will remain as is.
Okay, that's why I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Susie? Okay, as she mentioned, we do have a request to suspend the rules to vote on this tonight to give us the time to schedule the public hearing. So I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules of procedure. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes, and would now entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for the March 21st, 2022 regular meeting regarding changing the name of Merivee Drive to Miller Park Drive. Have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 4.19, Property and Liability Internal Service Fund Sheriff Vehicle Replacement, and Mr. Billifer will be back with us for that one.
Good evening again. This is not the first time I've been up for something like this. This is
Excuse me.
It's a request to appropriate fund balance from the Internal Service Fund and transfer from the Property and Liability Internal Service Fund to the General Fund to replace Sheriff's Department Unit 230 that was involved in an accident that totaled the vehicle outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, on I-40. Was involved in a four-car accident, and that vehicle has been totaled. That person was traveling to a 5-week training in Alabama for bomb disposal, if I'm not mistaken. And that vehicle was totaled. So to replace that, we would transfer the funds from the fund that we keep that pays off auto accidents insurance. We would need to transfer that to our general fund to buy a new piece of equipment.
And that is because we self-insure.
That's correct. That's correct. And we would not buy a vehicle from that fund.
Any questions?
There is
Yes.
a budget amendment prepared, and Wendy is here if we need to discuss that.
I bet the person driving it is okay.
The officer is fine. He did have to kick the door to get it open and check on the other folks that were in the cars. So it was right outside Knoxville. If you've ever traveled that a lot, you know that you can come up on a couple places where everybody decides to hit the brakes because of a backup, and if a couple of folks in front of you are a little bit late, our officer did a very good job at trying to actually swerve to hit the passenger side of the car and not the driver's side. And he immediately, once he did kick open his door, was able to get out and get to the person that he had hit.
Any further questions on that item? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We move to item 4.20 from Solid Waste, ordinance acknowledging the renewal of the solid waste collection and disposal franchise agreement through December 31st, 2027.
Good afternoon, everyone. The current solid waste collection and disposal exclusive franchise agreement with Republic Services expires on December 31st of this year. The agreement includes the option for 2 5-year renewals, and Republic Services has expressed a desire to execute the first of these renewals. So just to talk about what this agreement includes, because it's kind of unique in terms of franchise solid waste contracts. First of all, it includes collection of residential trash and bulky waste, as well as recycling collection and disposal services in the unincorporated sections of Cabarrus County, and that's for residents who so choose to desire curbside collection. And there is a fee for those services. This agreement also includes disposal of solid waste, residential solid waste, at the Charlotte Motor Speedway landfill for Cabarrus County, and also the municipalities of Kannapolis, Mount Pleasant, Midland, and Harrisburg. Concord has their own separate host fee agreement with Republic Services with regards to disposal of waste at the Speedway landfill, so that's why they're omitted from this one. Also, they do allow us at a discounted rate to take our residential waste that we receive at the construction and demolition landfill on Irish Potato Road at our residential waste convenience center. So that's for folks who don't want curbside collection or just have extra waste that they need to get rid of, bulk waste, et cetera. They bring it up to our facility. We in turn take it to the Charlotte Motor Speedway landfill, and we do get a discounted rate for it. Currently, it's $42 per ton. Just note that their residential or their normal gate rate is $78 a ton with a 2-ton minimum, so it's about $156 versus what we're paying. The other thing that this agreement includes is the guarantee of space for disposal at the Charlotte Motor Speedway landfill for the next 5 years. If we don't go ahead and renew this agreement, there's no guarantee. They're not saying that there's no, but they're just not guaranteeing it. So that's what kind of makes this agreement a little unique, because it kind of covers a multitude of items. And one reason for this is you kind of go back probably early 90s when we had our own municipal solid waste landfill at Irish Potato Road, and it was closing up, and Charlotte Motor Speedway landfill was opening. This allowed us to have landfill space at that facility, and also allowed Kannapolis, Midland, Harrisburg, Mount Pleasant the ability to take waste there as well. So there's some security there. So that's kind of why this one kind of encompasses more than just collection of waste for residents. So right at this point, we are recommending renewal. And for one thing, the number one thing is to guarantee us landfill space at the Charlotte Motor Speedway landfill. I think we've talked about this probably for the last couple years, that there is limited space over there. Currently, 10 years is what they're estimating. And as you get kind of tighter and tighter, you know, the rates are going to go up, and they can kind of be choosy about who they allow to bring over there. So I think by renewing this agreement, it also kind of gives us a little bit of security. It also gives security for Kannapolis, Midland, Harrisburg, Mount Pleasant as well, so that they've got a place to take it to. There are other places we can go to, but it's going to be outside the county. Travel distance could be a lot further, and obviously the cost would go up. We did put this contract out to bid back in 2017, just to see if we could get some competitive pricing. And Republic Services actually won that bid by, I think their price was about 94 cents cheaper per month for residents to have curbside trash and recycling collection. One thing that kind of went against us is the tipping fees, or the disposal costs for taking waste to the Speedway landfill actually went up on us. We actually, back prior to 2017, anything that we collected at the Irish Potato Road facility and we took to the Speedway landfill, there was no tipping fee charge. that changed from $0 to $37. So sometimes not sure if they did that in spite because of us putting it back out to bid, but that was one ramification of it. So, and I can tell you that last year we paid about $85,000 in landfill disposal fees for folks that bring stuff to our Irish Potato Road facility. So that's kind of what we're looking for here, and obviously with this franchise agreement, this would be the first of 2 readings. But that's kind of a background on the contract, and the reasons for recommending renewal. And at this point, I'd like to offer it up if anyone has any questions or wants more information on this agreement.
I have asked you these questions before, and will ask them again for the benefit of the public watching, but I have had inquiries in the past from folks that say, in Iredell County, I have a choice of 2 or 3 persons to haul my garbage, and I pay a much lower rate than I pay in Cabarrus County. And so why would we not want to create that type of environment?
That is an option, and people have different viewpoints on it. One issue, if you do open it up to other folks, you kind of lose kind of flow control in terms of where your waste is going to as well. Now, you may say, well, what does that mean? And for the most part, it's going to a permitted landfill, but there are some of these little mom and pop collection companies that you're not really sure where they're going to. And there's examples in Cabarrus County where there's some unauthorized landfilling going on right now. So that's one thing. You do risk the chance of having multiple waste collection trucks going up and down the street multiple times per day. And note that a loaded waste collection truck could weigh up to 55,000 tons up and down your roads, could be tearing up the roads, excess noise, potential pollution, things like that. You could offer it up. I can tell you there was a smaller company that actually was servicing some residents in Cabarrus County within the last year. They did go out of business, and that's the only way that we found out is we had a bunch of neighbors on this one street call us up and say, hey, what can we do? This one company went out of business. So that's kind of some of the drawbacks with having multiple companies servicing the county. It is an option, though. And there are some counties that do it, different viewpoints. That's just my viewpoint, that it's just you kind of lose control in terms of service as well, at least with Republic Services right now, that we also have through the Cartology app, which has actually turned out to be wonderful. So when a resident has a service issue with Republic Services, they just send out an email. I get it. I can reach out to Republic Services. I've got contacts over there. We've been very successful. I would say 99% of any service issue we've had with residents, we've rectified within 24 hours. If you start having multiple companies, it's very tough for us to kind of service. I will tell you that you won't be able to use the Cartology app anymore because you won't have really any idea who is using what collection company. So if somebody on one street is using collection A, really don't know, so I won't be able to use that. So that service will kind of go away from residents. So when you do subscribe with Republic, you do get the benefit of the Cartology app, which does provide collection schedules. And like I said, it's a great way to communicate with us. It's great for me to kind of see what's going on as well, to see if there are multiple issues with service. One thing that's been a great benefit is with the bad weather that we've had, we've been able to communicate with the residents fairly quick, kind of letting them know if we're on a service delay. And also just to let them know or for them to let me know if, say, a trash cart or recycling cart was not serviced. So this way I can kind of get back to Republic Services, reach out to them saying, hey, I've noticed that maybe this street hasn't been serviced. And we've had good results with that. Like I said, it's definitely an option to let folks do that. But there are some drawbacks with it as well.
And so so that's just like Iredell County. It's just kind of a free-for-all. Whoever
You know,
might have,
some places have control over it. Now, you could have licenses in place saying, okay, if you want to serve the residents of Cabarrus County, you will have to apply for a waste collection license, and there will have to be some stipulations in place. That's one way that you can control it. Some counties do that. It's different based on where it goes to. The other thing you also have to look into is every county might have their own landfill as well. Iredell does have their own landfill. Rowan County has their own landfill. They can kind of control what comes in. They kind of see what comes in. They can kind of control prices. We really don't have that luxury. So we're, you know, you just don't know. Having this agreement with Republic Services, having them own and operate the landfill at the Speedway kind of gives us a little bit of control in terms of pricing as well.
and so if we did decide to do something different, what would be the ramifications to our municipalities?
Well, we'd probably have to go back to Republic Services saying we're going in a different direction. We'd probably have to renegotiate an agreement in terms of supplying airspace for them at the Charlotte Motor Speedway landfill.
Which probably would be more costly.
I'm guessing it would. I can't say that with 100% certainty, but if I was Republic Services and you're taking away this section of the agreement, but you still want airspace at my landfill, especially knowing that there's probably 10 years left, they could be a little choosy about it. It's possible.
Yeah.
You also have to note that, as I mentioned before, they've got the host fee agreement with the city of Concord. So they also have to provide airspace for those folks as well, so they would get a little priority over us.
Yeah, I think in the other item, and someone had made this request in connection with a service complaint during the bad weather that, and I think they said, I strongly encourage you to take competitive bids. I believe that was the way it was worded. And so I think you've really explained already why that might not be the best idea.
Well, for one thing, it's like I said, it's kind of a unique agreement that covers multiple facets. It's just not collection of your trash, it's also disposal. And as I mentioned before, we did take it out for a bid back in 2017. Republic Services was the low bidder. The fallback was on that is the fees, if you look back, actually did go up about 3% versus what we were paying earlier for that agreement.
Which will not be the case if we extend this.
Well, at least we know what the certainty is of the costs.
Yeah.
You know, if we put out the bid, maybe we do get some competitive bids and it's better, but maybe we don't. At least we do have cost certainty. Now, each route is so unique in terms of you can sit there and say, well, this county is cheaper or that. You also have to look at the routes that they have to cover. Now, with Cabarrus County, you've got pockets of unincorporated section throughout. It's not the easiest route to do, might cause it to be a little more expensive than, say, if you've got a more dense route, say, just example, City of Concord. They can knock out a lot more residents in a short period of time than what Republic Services can do out in the county. So that's why the prices could be a little higher. The one thing that was good to put it out to bid back in 2017 is that at least we know that this pricing most likely is in the ballpark. Because the other company that put the bid in was very close. Republic was lower, but the other company was right there. So that, to me, that tells me that this pricing is probably, like where it needs to be, looking in the fact of what it costs to go out there and travel these routes, pick up the trash, return it back. Also look what their labor cost is, what the cost is for the truck, look at disposal cost and things like that. So I think with pretty good confidence, could you get it a more competitive bid? Possibly. But I think we showed back in 2017, we really didn't see that.
You take a little bit of a risk.
It's possible, and like I said, we did do that, and it kind of burnt us in terms of losing that zero tipping fees at the Speedway for the items that folks brought up to Irish Potato for us.
All right. Thank you. Any other trash questions? All right. And so this would be first reading at our regular meeting?
Correct.
Yes, okay. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 4.21 from Tax Administration, advertisement of 2021 delinquent taxes. We're happy to have David Thrift with us for that item.
Good evening. So, North Carolina General Statute 105-369 requires that I report to you the amount of unpaid taxes for the current fiscal year that are liens on real property. So our 2021 real property taxes unpaid are $10,431,601.29. From that, we subtract those accounts that are currently within bankruptcy, so that's $71,073.58 for our total lien on real property of $10,360,527.71. So this statute also requires that upon receipt of this report, the board must order the tax collector to advertise those tax liens. I would request that the advertisement date be set for March 27th, 2022. The reason we wait that long is so that once this is ordered, we can send another notice to the record owner of each parcel, notify him of that outstanding balance, provide that one more opportunity to make a payment before we put those names in the paper for advertisement. So, requested action then is the motion to approve this report for the 2021 outstanding tax balances that are lien on real property, and to order the tax collector to advertise these liens in the Independent Tribune on Sunday, March 27th, 2022. Be happy to answer any questions.
David, this is Lynn. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, sir.
Okay, on the pieces of property that's got bankruptcies on, I think you said 71,000. What happens to those dollars that's owed to the county? Does that become a lien, and it's picked up by the new owner, or whoever somehow gets the property? How does that work? I'm just out of curiosity.
Sure. The reason we pull those out from this calculation is because at the point when those properties are in the bankruptcy process, we can't collect on those. So what we're doing is waiting for that bankruptcy process to take its course of action, and at the end result of that, the debts are distributed by the court at that point. So it depends on what takes place throughout that process as to what happens with those actual funds that are owed. But for this, any current taxes owed, we just don't have the ability by law to collect on those because they're in that bankruptcy protection.
But even though the taxes are still owed, so the county don't lose on that.
That's correct. Those taxes remain delinquent and owed. We just can't enforce collection while they're in bankruptcy protection.
I'm with you. Thank you very much, David.
Yes, sir.
So we just talked a month or so ago about the excellent collection rate from last year, which was 99.
Over 99%. Yep.
Yes. And so this total amount of delinquency, how would that compare with the last few years? About the same, higher, lower?
So at this point, we're on pace with kind of our typical year of collection. It's a little hard to tell because this number changes daily as we collect these taxes. So this is kind of a snapshot for the purpose of this presentation. What we'll actually advertise will be hopefully a much lower number. And then we'll proceed to our goal of being over 99% again this year. So that's kind of the direction we're heading. But compared to other years, we're kind of at a typical pace.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for David? All right, then we will move to item 4.22, interlocal agreement regarding tax collection for Town of Harrisburg, and David has that one as well. Town of Huntersville.
Town of Huntersville. So in May 17th of 2021, the Town of Huntersville annexed 2 parcels that are within Cabarrus County. The annexation ordinance was actually recorded in the Cabarrus County Register of Deeds on October 18th, 2021. So the Town of Huntersville has requested that the Cabarrus County tax collector undertake collection of tax revenue on the town's behalf. Attached for your consideration is an interlocal tax collection agreement. The terms that we're proposing are the same as the terms for all the municipalities that we collect for within Cabarrus County. So that's a fee of $2 per regular bill and $3.50 for any supplemental discovery type bills. And that's consistent with all of the municipalities in the county. So there's a couple reasons there's benefits to doing this, or a number of ways. One is to the taxpayer. It provides the taxpayer that single bill and the single point of contact for any tax-related questions and to make a payment. So they're not communicating with the county and then also the town of Huntersville. For the municipality, it's a cost savings, $2 per regular bill and $3.50 is not a large number compared to what the cost of for them to actually take the collection activity themselves. So it saves the municipalities. And then from our standpoint, we look at it mainly from a customer service ability to provide. We can guarantee that excellent customer service for all of our taxpayers if we control the collection for everyone in the county and provide that single bill and single contact. So our request and motion tonight is to approve the contract between Cabarrus County and the town of Huntersville and authorize the county manager to execute the contract on behalf of Cabarrus County, subject to review or revisions by the county attorney.
I just have a quick question. So that, the $2 and then the $3.50, so it's savings on their end, and we can absorb the cost. Our cost is not higher than what we're charging, and have we looked, so if we're doing that for everybody, that's the same number that we've done. When's the last time that number got audited to make sure that that's not a net cost to the county?
Sure. So that number was initially put in place in 2017. So it's not been too long since we established those fees, those rates. Prior to 2017, we used a pretty complex percentage calculation based on the number of bills and the amounts. And it was a complex calculation every year that we were providing. And that was prior to the point when we were collecting for Concord. So at that point in 2016, we made the arrangement to start collecting taxes for the city of Concord. And the ability at that point to go to the $2 flat fee and the $3.50 with bringing in Concord made that certainly a cost beneficial analysis for us. We send a bill to all of these taxpayers anyway because they're in the county regardless of whether we collect for the city or not. So the additional cost is not significant for us to handle. We're going to collect on those particular tax bills anyway. It's just it changes the amount that we're actually collecting.
So this is the first time that Huntersville has annexed into Cabarrus County? These are the only parcels?
That's correct. So there's two parcels at this point. I think the plan is for potential subdivision of those. So we're in discussions now with the other departments and service questions, but it's time to initiate. This is a good time to initiate the tax for the upcoming billing in July so we can get the records set and make sure we're collecting those.
So we now have, so do you also collect taxes for Locust?
We do, for the portion that is
Yeah.
within Cabarrus County.
So we now have 7 municipalities that you're.
This will be 7, yes.
This will be 7. Any questions for David? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to the approval of our regular meeting agenda, and you all have a copy of that before you. I do not think we have taken any action that changes anything, and that already includes the public hearings. I think that the public hearings are for the March meeting.
Really, we don't need to even worry about that, right?
If you want to bring it, because I
Okay.
didn't send it out.
The Concord Downtown Development Corporation, which is number 3 on that agenda.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to send that out between now and then, I guess?
I should have sent it out
Right.
prior. Also, it's a staff appointment.
Got it.
To finish
Jonathan. Okay.
Jonathan's role. So it didn't technically have to come, but
Got it.
because we we were making that change. We wanted you guys to know about it, and it was my fault.
That's
did
okay.
not get it
I just
all
thought I
work
might have
session.
missed something, because sometimes I do that. So yes, I see no changes.
Well,
You did have
what
that
about
second
the,
DHS item?
do what?
The second DHS item?
So, yeah, we'll add that as
Okay.
new business.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did I miss the appointments for Juvenile Crime Prevention Council? On the list of,
It's just a removal.
it's just a okay,
I'm sorry,
gotcha.
that's why I didn't send it to you.
Gotcha,
because it was
okay.
simply a removal.
Okay, any other corrections?
Motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That motion passes, and we do not have need of a closed session tonight, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no, and we stand adjourned. And we look forward to seeing everyone at our February 21st meeting. We will have a called meeting this coming Thursday on February the 10th at 6:30 PM in our regular meeting chambers to vote on an economic development project. So we look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you.